Well, good afternoon, everyone. It's wonderful to see you again. Thank you for joining me again for Thinking Tuesday. As you know, every Tuesday, every Tuesday at noon, we gather together to talk about what we're thinking, examine our thoughts, and see how they're serving us, and be courageous enough to get rid of those that are not serving us, and also to adopt some that will serve us better. Our slogan for this Thinking Tuesday is "Your mind is a garden, your thoughts are the seeds." You can grow flowers or you can grow weeds. And what do you think we do on Thinking Tuesday at noon? We get rid of the weeds. We cultivate flowers, which are those positive thoughts. We elevate our thinking and we try to be possibility thinkers because that's what's going to take us far. So, before I go on, I just want to wish you the best. I hope that you have um, survived the storm and that you have not really been severely impacted, if at all, and that your loved ones are doing well. Don't forget to continue to check in on those who have been impacted because it was like nothing we had ever experienced and that we imagined. So, hope you're safe, hope your loved ones are safe, and continue to look in at each other. So today, I want to share with you uh, a little experience that I had recently. I was browsing in a store recently, and I saw a postcard that said the following. It said, "I told my wife to embrace her mistakes. I told my wife to embrace her mistakes, and she hugged me." And just thinking about it again makes me laugh. I love a great punchline, and that was truly a great one. Um, I had a good laugh, but then when I recovered from that big laugh that I had, I started to think, how willing am I to embrace my mistakes? Because Lord knows I have made some mistakes that I really would have liked to put behind me. Some because they were just too painful, some because they were costly, and they were just not pleasant. So I want to ask you the same question. And be aware that I said I wanted to, I would have liked to. So I want to ask you the same question. How willing are you to embrace your mistakes? I'm sure you've had some, as I mentioned, that I've had, that I would have liked to put behind me because of the experience. But I'm raising this question to you today because I know that it is easier to try to forget our mistakes or deny our mistakes or justify them in some way without really holding them up as a mirror and looking at them for what they are. We're all often too quick to get rid of them, not wanting to be reminded of them, sometimes being harsh on ourselves for having made the mistakes, saying things such as, "I was so stupid, that was so stupid of me, I can't imagine, I can't believe that I was that stupid, that I made this mistake." We would rather distance ourselves from the mistake or pretend that it was not even a mistake. Sometimes that it was just bad luck, whatever the case may be. But no matter how we explain it or how we try to justify it, we have to look at our mistakes. We can all agree that mistakes are painful, and that's why we tend to deny them. We justify them, do anything to get rid of them. None of us treasure bad experiences or those painful mistakes. So I mentioned in the beginning that I would have preferred to push them behind me. Some were easier to look at than others, but my approach has been to learn to embrace and examine my mistakes. Because if you can't confront your mistakes, you're bound to make them over and over again. So we often hear the statement that experience is the best teacher. Well, I've had to examine that statement as well, because the mere experience is not necessarily what teaches us the lesson that we should have learned or that we could have learned. It is the evaluation of that experience that gives us the insight about what went wrong, why it went wrong, and how we can do better next time. So it's the evaluation of that experience. So if we run from our mistakes, we will never be able to evaluate them and mine the gold that sometimes is in our experiences, our mistakes. Mistakes are to be examined before they're cast aside, if that's what you ultimately want to do. But mistakes can be our greatest teachers. We can learn some profound lessons through our mistakes that we make. So rather than beating ourselves over the head, we want to examine our mistakes. Sometimes we might find that it really was not that bad a mistake, because it gets us to where we want to go, or helps us to find what we were seeking by taking a different path. Or even better, sometimes our mistakes open a path for us that allows us to discover something that's quite unexpected. So mistakes can be treasured also. Yes, they do come with some emotional, it has an emotional component, but that doesn't mean that they're no good, that they cannot be used. So before I go further, I want to remind you of something that we often forget when we're dealing with mistakes, and hopefully if we remember this, it would help us to begin to handle our mistakes differently. And that is something that when I tell you, you're going to say, oh, I knew that, but we don't pay attention to it. We don't really give the kind of credence, we don't reflect on it as we should. And that is, we are all humans. Yes, we are all humans. Nobody is perfect. And in this life, we are going to make mistakes. So we need to give ourselves some grace. Give ourselves some grace, because we often get caught up in the emotion of the mistake and beat ourselves up. Making the mistake is hard enough. We don't need any more. We don't need any self-punishment. We need some grace to see what can we learn from this experience. Yes, you need to give yourself, and I'm not saying that you should not pay attention to the emotion, because again, like I said, we're all humans. So you can give yourself some time to grieve your mistake, but allow yourself to step back after a period of time to gain some perspective of what took place and what can be learned from it, most of all. So I'm not saying to ignore your emotions, because that would not be prudent, and it certainly would not be realistic. We're human, so we have feelings. So don't stay with the emotion, but at some point give yourself an opportunity to step back and look at the mistake, the experience, and what can be learned from it. It might not be possible at the moment that the mistake is discovered, but you can also learn to laugh at yourself. I have laughed at myself about some things that have happened that I didn't expect to happen. And sometimes they're so hilarious. I mean, you can't make some of those things up. So learn to laugh at yourself, because sometimes we take ourselves too seriously and it keeps us stuck. It does not allow us to have a more expansive view of what took place. So we lose the opportunity, in fact, just to give ourselves some relief, to de-stress a little bit from whatever the situation was. And then try to keep the right perspective. If I ask you, what do you say to yourself when you've made a mistake? What would your answer be? There can be a positive and there can be a negative. Are you the one who would say, oh, I'm a failure, I give up? Or it's because of that person or those people that I made this mistake? Is that the way you're going to look at it? Or are you the type of person that would say, oh, it didn't work out this time, but I'm going to try to find a new way to make this work. I'm going to continue to push. Do you consider the experience that you're gaining from having made that mistake? You know, when we look at scientists, they make a lot of mistakes, but they have words that they use to categorize their mistakes. They call it research. They call it collecting data. You know, they don't just throw out the whole experiment if it goes wrong. They look to see, well, what can I learn from this? And how can I change this? How can I tweak this? What did I learn in terms of a new approach? Because unfortunately, when we look at it negatively and we say that we're a failure, I'm going to give up, I'm stupid, and all those negative self-talk, which does not help us at all, we are basing our self-worth on that mistake, whatever the mistake is. No matter what the mistake is, what size it is, our self-worth should not be based on our mistakes. If we can look at our mistakes and learn from them, consider it research like the scientists, step away from them, talk to someone, help someone to talk you through them so that you don't get so caught up in the emotions that you get stuck in the emotions. So don't base your self-worth on that bad experience. And you don't have to be defined by your mistakes, and you should not allow anyone, truly, I could spend another hour on this particular piece, but don't allow anyone to define you by the mistakes you've made, because everyone has made mistakes, including those who might be critical of what you've done. Don't lose perspective by feeling sorry for yourself. Yes, you can be disappointed. You can be disappointed, and you will be disappointed. But instead of wallowing in self-pity, which is something different, and getting stuck there, again, allow yourself to acknowledge your feelings and then find a way to move on. What can I learn? What did I learn? How can I change this? How can I do it better next time? How can I avoid it next time? You know, because when we wallow in self-pity, we remain stuck without learning the lessons that are waiting for us to grasp. Because there are lessons. This is life. This is life. Life is a classroom that we live in. And life teaches us lessons. How well we learn, what kind of students we are of life, then that's really up to us. And then I want you to encourage not to give up. Never give up. Some people tell me I'm like a dog with a bone, and I would agree. When I have an idea, when I have something I want to accomplish, I'm going to try to do it until I feel like I've turned over every stone, and even then, I'm going to keep looking. So don't give up, because sometimes you're just on the brink of making a new discovery. So yes, you'll be disappointed, but it doesn't mean you should give up. When we see people who we consider quote unquote successful, we just had the Olympics, right? And we saw those who gained a gold medal, a silver or bronze medal. Yeah, do you think they didn't make mistakes? But what you're seeing is the results of them learning from their mistakes, doing better than they did the time before, making a better time in the relay races or in the swimming or whatever it is that they were competing in. So mistakes are part of our growth. Expect them and learn from them. Then bad experiences or mistakes, if you want to use that word also, some people consider them bad experiences because of what comes with that particular experience. They can be based on ignorance. Sometimes we make mistakes because we just did not have the knowledge to do better. But that is different. That is very different from continuing to make the same mistakes over and over because of either stubbornness, pride, arrogance. Sometimes we make a mistake and we're so embarrassed we don't want anyone to know, so we pretend that it didn't happen, or we keep doing it over and over to prove a point. What point are you proving? So, but if you don't have the knowledge and you make a mistake, then that's different because now you can look for the information that you didn't have. And that's very different from continuing to stumble and fall without getting up, without changing your course. So leverage your mistakes to make new changes from the lessons you've learned. Ask yourself, I'd love for you to begin to take a new perspective, those of you who may not have been dealing with mistakes in this way. But ask yourself, what can I learn from this experience? My mentor, John Maxwell, wrote a book called Sometimes You Win, Sometimes You, and there's a dash. And most people would say, sometimes you win, sometimes you lose. But I'm going to encourage you to change that and think of sometimes you win, sometimes you learn. Because we can learn from our mistakes. We can always win if we choose. And remember, choose. We think things through. That's what we do on Thinking Tuesday. We look at things differently. We think about things differently. And we make an intentional choice to do things differently. We tend to not want to step out of our comfort zones because that's the way we've always done it. We feel it's risky to do otherwise, but we'll never know unless we try to think and do things differently. So it can be a win-win situation, even though initially it might look like a loss. But if you learn a lesson from it, you don't lose. So try to make this your new perspective for viewing and dealing with mistakes, because life is in session. Pay attention. The teacher is there. Show up as a student and pay attention to what you're being taught. There are lessons all around you, all around you. So think about this. Sometimes you win, sometimes you lose, sometimes you win. You learn, I'm sorry. Sometimes you win, sometimes you learn. Learn from your mistakes. So I hope, as I do every week, that this has added value to you. Share it with a friend, a relative, loved one, someone that you feel could benefit from this as well, because we can all benefit from this. And again, I invite you to go to my website, drcherylburton.com. View the programs and services that I offer. Feel free to reach out to me if there's some way that I can help you. In my coaching, I coach people through issues such as this also. How are they living their lives? How have they been trying to reach their goals, and what has been getting in their way of reaching their goals? So reach out to me. I'll be glad to assist you, complimentary with a consultation. And I look forward, as I usually do, to see you next Tuesday at noon for another episode of Thinking Tuesday. Take care of yourself, give yourself some grace, and bye for now. See you next week. Bye bye.